Hello and welcome back to another video. Yesterday a devlog came out for our lovely Darktide, so I'm just going to give a little read over for it for those people who don't like to read giant walls of text and prefer audiobook styles, so strap in, listen in, and for those who like to please their eyes with some visuals, I'll throw some Darktide gameplay on the background and superimpose the text on the screen as I read through it. Right, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm not expecting too many fresh details because they've never seemed to like to reveal too much, but let's see what they have to offer. Hello, devoted rejects. My name is Matt Anderson, also known as the Resident Combat Guy, lead combat designer, or just rather done, around the interwebs. I'd like to tell the story of the Darktide team's new take on classes and all the player choice and build availability that comes with it. This update is the result of a wide collaboration throughout the project, as changing the core of what defines a player character has far-reaching implications on many parts of the game. First off, we've always looked at Darktide as a game where you define your own character and playstyle, much more so than in our previous Tide games. The idea that we'd be less prescriptive in the way we present who you play always has some friction with the class system. It is just natural that presenting a class full with loadouts restrictions, abilities and talent packages comes with a heavy lore package and a specific, you're choosing to play this guy. We wanted to change that. We wanted to make the character creation stretch further into build choices and loadout configurations. We wanted you to be able to pick up and choose and define your own main character using any and all combinations of gameplay and cosmetic choices available. The whole forge your own narrative taken to a personal level. I think if there was better cosmetic choices, that'd be great. Hopefully they'll deliver those in the future, and hopefully they won't be behind a giant paywall, but they will be because of the way the shop is set up, and that's likely to continue to stay the same way. Let's continue. Now we just wanted to widen the available builds and playstyles. So for those of you who aren't really that heavy into lore or characterization, there is a heavy focus on just adding more game to explore. So we made big complex talent trees with lots of build freedom. We've expanded each class and raised the perspective a bit. The sharpshooter is now just one of the builds available within the veteran tree. This shifting class definition helps us give you guys some more freedom in picking your build, while keeping the design space nice and open for us. We've internally talked about the different trees rather as domains than classes, striving for that broader range of sources. So, a character from the veteran domain can be anything from a sharpshooter to a squad leader to a more commando/spec ops type character, and anything in between. This allows us a nice freedom to add or change stuff in the future, as there's plenty of stuff that fit within these broader categories. Yeah, I generally agree that it's a good thing. I think that the change into character trees, while it is a step away from what they've done before, such as in Vermintide, where a new class would be a completely new character, this sort of opens up the door for them to be able to add another class in its entirety in the future, that would then have an ability tree just like they're doing so with the 4 original classes in the game. So that would effectively be a new class that has 3 subclasses within it. I think that's probably a better model, but that entirely depends on them creating a new class in the future in the first place, which, since this change has taken this long, I'm not sure them creating a new class is going to come anytime soon. But who knows, maybe they'll surprise us. We'll have to wait and see, won't we? I think it's interesting to see that there's going to be some squad leader stuff for team boosts and commando/spec ops types. I wonder what that entails, but time will tell, time will tell. Let's continue. Within the talent trees, you can keep things by the book and go for some more conservative builds, like recreating the current preacher class within the zealot space, or you can be a bit more unorthodox and forge your own character with a mix of picks as you navigate across the talent tree. We want to make a team-supporting fanatic that bolsters the team with invigorating prayers while dipping into the mobility and knife-tossing mayhem that the difficult side of our zealot tree provides. Go right ahead. It's your character, your story, it's your choice. So that's them confirming there is indeed a difficult side of the zealot tree, which would be the right-hand side if I'm not mistaken. on this little preview image they have on the thing. As we can see, it looks like we're getting a throwing knife or a knife blitz ability, which is a grenade ability, by the way, in case you didn't know what blitz is. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So that's the main idea. The tricky thing with ideas is that you also have to realize them and somehow build all of this. We approached this with a couple of different approaches. On the practical side of things, we started out with just slapping together a bunch of build packages for each class. Quickly staple a bunch of buffs and bonuses together with combinations of new and old blitz and combat abilities. Some rapid prototyping, some reanimation of old forgotten feature tests, some scavenging throughout the codebases later, we had a solid library of around 30 builds up and running on internal tests. There's also a fairly highbrow academic approach to this whole design space, mainly consisting of designers trying their best to cosplay some kind of intellectual ludologist while defining gestalts, interplay, cooperation, and the whole actions into moves mapping. In short, doing some paper design where we guess real accurately which power fantasies and gameplay roles we can cover, and how they'll rotate to allow everyone their moments in the sun while keeping some variation in the gameplay. There have been fairly large parts of this theoretical map that we didn't cover in the original classes, mainly the area of team support, which brings a much needed cooperation loop into the moment-to-moment gameplay. There's also parts of our roster that just lacked coverage for certain playstyles, shooty ogreing, for example. It does sound like they're having a big focus on team support and team buffs. I think if there's talent tree sections that focus largely on team support, they'll probably most likely be the least played. I think it's historic in games that people want to do the most damage and kill the most things, and supporting the team usually doesn't also involve being able to do the most damage and kill the most things. So it's going to be interesting to see the pick rate of those talent trees and whether they're actually good enough to warrant choosing over killing things. But as always, time will tell. So we'll just have to wait until October 4th. Let's continue. Equipped with this set of builds and theoretical map of what we'd need to cover, we set about playtesting. It's only after we've tried things in-game that we actually started building the trees themselves. This might seem counterintuitive, but we really didn't want to end up in the tree demands there to be X amount of buff/choices, but rather allow what made sense for the game to direct the format of the trees. The old feat layout, for instance, mandates that we construct 6 rows of free interchangeable options for everything, which can be restrictive and make cool ideas fall short. With a new rule set that allows for much more freedom, we can instead change the trees to fit the cool stuff we want to add. Now, here's where things become tricky. From a balancing perspective, we broke down our pre-made builds into their components and spread them out across emerging tree structures. We wanted there to be clear and easily identifiable options here, portrayed by a branching end of trees, so new players or less tinkering prone ones can just click their way down and have a nice build to play. However, we also wanted there to be a tinkering space where less obvious combinations of choices create their own build packages. The principle of the udder and the teats was born. It's a very cow-based metaphor, and perhaps not the most sensible one, but it worked. Higher up in the talent trees, within the udder, players are free to tinker and pick their path, narrow or broad. Lower down in the tree, we branch out into the keystone teats, which provide a more single path, deep dive into particular buff sets. We also wanted each tree to be free from restrictive layout rules and provide their own individual tinkering spaces. So some trees have larger udders, while some have longer teats. This analogy is ridiculous. Oh dear. If we wanted to make another tree with like 5 teats, that would be okay too. These are some grimdark cows we're modelling after, so creative freedom is intact. The different nodes available within each talent tree are of the following different types. A blitz ability, the grenade slot or other type of extra attack. The combat ability, which is the ultimate bound by cooldown and high impact on the game. A keystone, which is more iconic talents, which varies between the trees but drive playstyle. A talent, which is an interactive buff that tie into core gameplay loops. An aura, which is various team buffs spread as coherency bonus. And a stat node, which is a simple flat bonus to a core stat. such as toughness, crit chance, and health. So these are essentially what we have now, just split up into different sections on the skill tree. Blitz ability obviously being the grenade, combat ability being your volley fire, your bull rush, I can't remember what the other two ones are called. Keystone looks to be, for example, how the veteran currently gets an extra weak spot damage buff. The talent is an interactive buff that ties into core gameplay loops, so not really exactly sure what that could be comparative to. But Aura is obviously comparative to how the Zealots can increase toughness damage reduction to the entire team with incoherency. And Stat Node is a simple flat bonus to a core stat, which is just going to be relevant to whichever build path you want to go down. Currently, we settled in on a 3 Blitz, 3 combat ability, and 3 Keystone configuration per talent tree, with a varied assortment of talents and stat nodes to provide the core of tinkering space. The inclusion of stat nodes also allows us to bring a previously hard-coded baseline into player control, where starting values for health, crit chance, toughness, etc. is just that, a starting point that is subsequently boosted through picking stat nodes within each talent tree. I just want to say that this is really horrible to read. So, my goodness, anyone that's listening or watching this video, I've saved you a little chore. As for the size of the trees and unlocking of points, we're trying to keep it simple. You'll earn 1 talent point per level, and players are free to respec at any time, landing us in a total budget of 30 points to spend on each talent tree. One core principle we've tried to follow is that you should be able to reach an end node around the 20 point mark, and then have some change to tinker with. This whole endeavour does have quite a heavy impact to the game balance, and thus warranted a wider take to make everything play nice together. We've shifted baseline difficulty scales, retuned health pools for enemies, tuned spawning limits, and rebalanced core parts of our damage system as part of our test-driven approach. What's the point of having suppression bonuses in a talent tree if everything is immediately suppressed, or worse, dead? I'm just personally commenting on that before I even read the end of this paragraph. I think dead shouldn't be worse, and it's almost a worrying thing to hear them say if it's worse when something's dead too fast, because when you can kill things quickly, that is what feels good in a game like this. It's fast paced. You don't want to be sticking around with too much enemies too long. You want to keep moving. You want to be able to push through. I don't want to make it take too long, or I just don't want to be in a situation where suppression is something that's really, really needed so you can kill basic enemies. But yeah, I suppose we'll have to wait and see, but I'm not really sure that things dying quickly is a bad thing, or something they should try and make happen less. So we'll see where they go with that. Hopefully it doesn't mean that they're going to make all of the enemies have 10,000 more HP and take forever to kill, meaning that they all need to be suppressed so you have a chance to kill them. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. History proves, or history has said, that we should all be wary about this. And the closer we get to the October 14th release day, is the more anxious I get about whether this is actually going to be a good patch release or not. Right now I'm around 50-50, a bit worried about whether it's going to be decent or whether it's going to tank the way the game plays currently, because currently it does play amazingly. There's just core things they could tweak. Adding subclasses is great. Yeah, maybe they could nerf and do a bit of weapon balancing. A lot of the weapons are useless right now compared to other weapons, but it's preferable that they would make the weapons that aren't as good a bit stronger rather than nerfing weapons that are good, except for unique situations such as pinning fire, which definitely does need a little bit of a tweak, because we all like to feel strong when we play the game or play a game like this, because that's what's fun. Yeah, I'll stop going on a rant now. We'll see what they do, and I'll continue reading on and stop waffling. Same goes for builds with a heavier emphasis on backstabs and flanking shots, which warranted an overhaul on how we stack our damage multipliers. This work has also included some deep dives into the weapon and blessing space, since we view a full build loadout as the sum of your weapons, curios, and talent choices. Brutal Momentum is one example of a blessing that has changed to fit snugly into the whole system. It now discounts any targets killed with a clean weak spot hit, allowing you to leap as many heads off as you manage to line up with the right build to back it up. Now, I am going to go on a little waffle again, because Brutal Momentum is one of the... It's a blessing that has been part of the conversation for overpowered blessings for a very long time now, as it's almost integral to make weapons such as the combat axes very useful. So this is weird. It's a massive nerf, yet could also be a huge buff. I'm not really sure how it's going to work. It says that it discounts targets killed with a clean weak spot hit. Does that mean that once it's activated, you'll kill any targets with clean weak spot hits? I'm not really sure what that means. Does that mean you could kill a pox walker and then walk up to a crusher, smash it on the head, and it's dead? I don't know. In my head, what it really is going to mean is that the Antax combat axe, for example, is going to be, it's going to become pretty bad. I think what it means really is that a lot of weapons that don't have perfect horizontal attacking animations are going to take a really, really massive nerf hit. As if you can't sweep heads along the lines, you're going to run out of cleave and hit, or you're going to fall short on your striking, and then you're going to get overwhelmed quite quickly. So I think the Mark II combat axe, I can't remember its initial name, is going to be much better than the Antax, I think, in this instance, because it has one more fully horizontal attack, I believe, over the Antax axe. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think, yeah, I don't know how this is going to work, but hopefully it doesn't just mean that it's not fun or it's useless. Because, I'm not kidding, but Brutal Momentum right now is actually just a really fun interaction to play with. And I'm honestly not, I don't think that returning or new players or casual players are going to be moaning about Brutal Momentum being too strong. I think that's just a symptom of the only players left playing the game being super duper omega hardcore people. And if Brutal Momentum's going to be gutted, then it's just going to feel a bit poo in it, really. But I suppose you can't have a good thing for too long. We'll see whether it's going to be terrible, but on the face of it, it does sound like a substantial nerf, simply due to the attack patterns of a lot of weapons. I think the shovel, the Ogrin shovel, for example, could benefit, because you can get perfectly horizontal strikes with that constantly, which means that Brutal Momentum could work about the same as it does now for that shovel, but anything that has a diagonal weapon attack strike that isn't perfectly horizontal, you're going to feel the difference on that. So combat axes, better prepare for a massive nerf. Yeah. Hopefully it's not too bad. We'll see. Anyway, enough with the waffle. With the new talent trees comes a range of new features on the Blitz side, to name a few. We've got crack grenades, flame grenades, homing magic missiles, and pretty rocks the Ogrin will find throughout his adventures that just happen to be very useful, if hurled at nasty traitors. I think magic homing missiles I'm very curious about. That should be interesting. And the Ogrin Rock, definitely, I hope it's a funny interaction, because it sounds like it's going to be hilarious. On the combat ability side, you will find taunting, stealth mechanics, warp shields, stances, and shouts to tailor your operative's build from a team support pillar to a murderous whirlwind of DPS and anything in between. Yep, that sounds like a lot of different variation compared to what we have now. I think taunting is going to be interesting. That has to come with damage reduction buffs, surely, but that would be great in situations such as Crusher Doom squads. Stealth mechanics, that's definitely an interesting one. I'm not really sure how stealth mechanics will work massively effectively. Has to be yeah, we'll see. Warp shields, we've seen that in the imagery. Stances, not really sure what that means. And shouts, I'm sure that means mainly the preacher preaching in the team to give the team a massive boost in X stat or whatever else. So, yeah, it's the variation's going to be definitely very good to have. I just hope that they do it alright and balance it well. We'll see. We'll return with more in-depth looks at the different talent trees and their configuration in the near future. Yay, we actually get to see more, hopefully. We have been continuously testing and tweaking as we have moved closer to release, both internally and together with playtesters from the community. The amount of builds that have emerged and minute fine-tuning of all the components that enable them have been a pleasure to explore and an interesting challenge to balance. One of the key reasons we made this change is to allow fast iterations and change. We hope to continue evolving the classes and the game together with you. The Darktide team. Yeah, so there's not really much we didn't know in this devlog, but we do get small clarification on little bits such as Brutal Momentum possibly being absolutely gutted. There is mention of a lot of different types of different abilities, such as team abilities. Shouts are going to be interesting to see if any other classes inherit those. The Ogrin could make a shout, to be fair, which could be quite taunting to the enemy. Maybe that could be part of the taunt mechanic. I hope all of these come with lots of new voice lines as well. I think the Preacher shouting aggressively into the fray kind of gives you a sort of external from the game morale boost, just hearing one of your teammates just hurling abuse. No, it won't even be abuse. Hurling prayer about the Emperor throughout the match. It's going to be great. Yeah, I am wary about team support focused skills, but I think if they give them decent statistics, such as if they give the team a big damage boost for X amount of time or anything like that, then it could actually work very well. But then I suppose you have to worry about the entire team coming in with loadouts like that. I think I've seen a lot of comments about all of the skill trees making it hard to perceive what the team needs in the pre-mission screen. So you could get an entire team full of support people, which, you know, if they're good players, can work regardless, because if you're good at the game, you can complete it. It doesn't really matter what build you have, generally. But for the most optimal teams, you don't want free boosting people. You want someone that's going to deal a decent whack of damage or is focused on picking off heavy targets, for example. But I do welcome all of the variation that this new update's going to bring. I just hope that they can do weapon balancing and balancing of the enemies well. And honestly, I don't have massive faith that they will do that well, but I don't think you can blame me, considering how the game history has played out. But hopefully they'll prove my glass half empty wrong, and I'll have a glass full of joy, and it'll be great. Just under 2 weeks away now. Everyone pray to the Emperor with me. And yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to catch my coverage of the update as it comes out in October 4th, as I will be covering the main patch notes itself, and then I'll be going through the gameplay over time, learning what there has to offer from it. So yeah, with that all done and dusted, I'm going to leave that there, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye.
This is how it's done.